Chapter 8. The afternoon sun bathed the Emerald Palace's gardens in a golden glow, casting soft shadows over the vibrant display of roses. Yellow, pink, and red blossoms stretched out in perfectly arranged clusters, their fragrance thick in the warm air. The grand gazebo at the center of the garden was draped in delicate wisteria vines, their cascading lilac blooms swaying gently with the breeze. Crystal chandeliers hung from the gazebo's wooden beams, their prisms catching the light and scattering tiny rainbows across the pristine marble floor beneath them. Jeanette stepped cautiously onto the stone path leading toward the gathering, her eyes widening at the breathtaking scenery. It was the first time she had set foot in the Emerald Palace, and despite herself, she was taken aback by its elegance. Everything was immaculate, the hedges trimmed to perfection, the fountains bubbling with crystal-clear water, and the flower beds arranged with meticulous care. It was a stark contrast to the Sapphire Palace where she resided. The Emerald Palace was not only grand, but it also exuded a warmth and beauty that made her feel slightly out of place. As she approached the other young ladies who had already arrived, she could hear their murmured conversations, their voices lilting like the melody of a soft waltz. They were dressed in gowns of luxurious fabrics, each designed to reflect their status and personal taste. Lady Seraphina, ever elegant, wore a gown of seafoam green, the bodice fitted perfectly to her slender frame. Pearls embroidered along the sweetheart neckline shimmered with every movement, and the flowing layers of chiffon gave her an almost ethereal appearance. Her platinum blonde hair was swept into an intricate braided updo, adorned with tiny emerald pins that complemented the palace's theme. Lady Isolde, standing gracefully nearby, was dressed in a gown of soft blush pink, her corset lined with delicate silver embroidery that traced the shape of blooming roses. The sheer lace sleeves draped over her shoulders like whispers of fabric, barely there, yet undeniably regal. Her dark brown hair was gathered into a loose side braid, with fresh pink roses woven into it. Compared to them, Jeanette's dress felt plain. The pastel lavender fabric was soft and modest, but it lacked the grandeur she had hoped for. The bodice was embroidered with silver thread and floral patterns, and satin ribbons tied into small bows adorned the skirt, but there were no extravagant jewels or layered embellishments. The dress had been well made, certainly, but it was clear that it had been chosen with budgetary restrictions in mind. It wasn't the gown of a princess, it was the gown of a noble girl trying to look like one. Still, she forced a pleasant smile and approached the group, gracefully inclining her head. "Good afternoon, ladies." Lady Seraphina turned toward her first, her smile polite but measured. Lady Jeanette, she greeted smoothly, offering a small curtsy. Jeanette's smile stiffened at the way she was addressed. "Lady? Not princess?" The other young women followed suit, offering the same greeting, Lady Jeanette. She tried not to let her displeasure show. Instead, she lifted her chin slightly and returned their greetings. "It's a pleasure to see you all. The gardens here are simply magnificent, are they not?" "They are," Lady Isolde agreed, her sharp eyes taking in Jeanette's expression with subtle amusement. "The Emerald Palace has always been known for its impeccable gardens. The flowers here bloom even in the harshest conditions." Jeanette nodded, though there was an underlying meaning to Isolde's words that she didn't care to dissect at the moment. "I must admit, this is my first time seeing it," she added, glancing toward the gazebo. "It's quite different from the Sapphire Palace." Lady Seraphina let out a soft chuckle. "Ah, yes. The Sapphire Palace must be quite different." Jeanette's grip on her skirts tightened, but she kept her composure. "Yes," she said simply. Just then, the ladies began to move toward the long table set beneath the gazebo, where the afternoon tea was about to begin. The table was draped in pristine white silk, and the place settings gleamed under the afternoon sun. Each guest had their own fine china plate with delicate gold filigree along the edges, accompanied by matching teacups resting on saucers with intricate floral designs. The cutlery was polished silver, each fork and spoon arranged with precise etiquette. At the center of the table sat an extravagant cake, its layers a soft buttery yellow, covered in smooth white frosting decorated with hand-piped sugar roses that matched the colors of the garden. Small tiered trays were filled with pastries, delicate fruit tarts, flaky scones, and petit fours adorned with candied flowers. Crystal pitchers held freshly brewed rose and jasmine tea, their floral scent wafting through the air as servants began to pour. As the young ladies seated themselves, Jeanette took note of the way the others naturally fell into conversation, their voices flowing like a well-rehearsed performance. It was as if they had attended 100 salons before this, seamlessly navigating the social dance of noble interactions. But something peculiar happened as they settled in. Jeanette found herself unconsciously taking on the role of a hostess. She had been the first to greet them, the first to comment on the garden, and now, the first to guide the conversation. "The selection of tea is quite exquisite," she noted, lifting her cup delicately. "I wonder if the blend was specially chosen for today." Lady Isolde arched a brow slightly, but played along. "The Emerald Palace does take great care in its selections. I believe Princess Athanasia enjoys floral teas." Jeanette nodded, allowing a small, knowing smile. "A refined choice." She could feel the subtle shift in the air, the way some of the ladies glanced at one another, as if noticing the way she spoke as though she belonged here, as though she were the host. It wasn't intentional, but now that she had started, she wasn't about to let the moment slip away. Still, there was one thing gnawing at her. No matter how much she spoke or how naturally she carried herself, they still only addressed her as Lady Jeanette. Never Princess. And she hated it. The moment Athanasia arrived, a hush fell over the gathering. The young ladies, who had been engaged in polite conversation, turned their attention to the princess as she gracefully descended the garden steps. The afternoon sunlight filtered through the wisteria vines of the grand gazebo, casting a soft glow on her platinum blonde waves, which cascaded down her back like spun silk. Her dress was nothing short of breathtaking, a masterpiece of royal blue and ivory. The fitted bodice, adorned with silver embroidery in the shape of tiny stars and crescent moons, shimmered subtly as she moved. The sweetheart neckline framed her delicate collarbones, and the sheer off-the-shoulder puffed sleeves added an air of effortless elegance. A satin ribbon cinched at her waist, emphasizing her graceful silhouette before the layered skirt flared out into a soft, cascading flow of ruffles. The translucent overlay gave the gown a dreamlike quality, as if she were a celestial maiden stepping out of a fairy tale. Her lace-up ivory heels, adorned with silver embellishments, clicked softly against the stone path as she approached. "Sorry to keep you waiting, everyone," Athanasia said, her voice gentle yet commanding. A collective murmur of admiration swept through the ladies. "She looks just like an imperial princess should," one of them whispered in awe. "So elegant, she truly shines in that color," another commented. Jeanette's fingers curled tightly against the fabric of her skirt as she forced a polite smile. Despite sharing the same blood, she and Athanasia could not have looked more different at that moment. With her modest pastel dress, Jeanette blended into the background, while Athanasia stood as the undeniable centerpiece of the gathering. If not for her own crystal blue eyes, a trait of the royal family, no one would ever mistake her for a princess. Athanasia took her seat with practiced grace, the sunlight catching the delicate shimmer of her skirt. The other young ladies immediately turned their attention to her, offering warm greetings and words of admiration. "Your Highness, your dress is exquisite," Lady Seraphina praised with a charming smile. Athanasia smiled politely. "Thank you, Lady Seraphina. I was quite looking forward to today's gathering." Jeanette sat stiffly, noting how effortlessly her half-sister commanded the room. Even without trying, Athanasia was treated as the true princess, while Jeanette, who had tried so hard to carry herself with poise, was merely Lady Jeanette. Swallowing her frustration, she reached for her teacup, her movements measured and delicate. But as she sipped, she couldn't shake the feeling that no matter how gracefully she acted or how much she played the part, she would always be seen as something lesser. As the young ladies took their seats, the sun bathed the Emerald Palace's garden in a golden afternoon glow. The grand gazebo, draped in wisteria, stood elegantly at the center, casting dappled shadows over the long table adorned with delicate white lace. Crystal plates held an array of pastel-colored pastries, rose-petal macarons, lemon tarts with gold leaf, and miniature eclairs dusted with powdered sugar. A towering cake, decorated with intricate floral designs in pink and ivory, stood as the centerpiece. Fine porcelain teacups, painted with gold accents, were placed beside polished silver cutlery, reflecting the light with a subtle gleam. Athanasia sat at the head of the table, exuding an effortless regality that drew everyone's attention. With a warm yet composed smile, she addressed the gathering. "Shall we begin the meeting?" she said, gently setting her teacup down. "Since I arrived quite late, I would like everyone to reintroduce themselves. And if it's not too much trouble, I'd love to hear about your family's rank in business." Excitement rippled through the group. The noble young ladies had spent weeks preparing for this very moment, their parents instructing them on how to present themselves and their family's achievements. This was their chance to gain the princess's favor, and they intended to make the most of it. One by one, they introduced themselves, their voices filled with pride. "My family owns the largest textile company in the capital, Your Highness," said Lady Clarice with a graceful nod. "We supply fine silks to both the nobility and the palace. My father is a viscount and manages several trading routes for rare spices," Lady Seraphina added smoothly. "My family's banking firm has been in service to the empire for generations," another girl chimed in. Jeanette listened quietly, her hands folded in her lap. She had nothing to contribute, her background lacked the prestige of business dealings. While she had hoped this gathering would be an opportunity to shine, it was becoming apparent that she was overshadowed. Then, Athanasia's gaze shifted towards a young girl who had remained unusually quiet. "My lady?" Athanasia prompted gently. The girl flinched slightly before looking up. She had soft wavy blonde hair that fell past her shoulders, framing her delicate features. Her green eyes, striking yet hesitant, flickered downward again as she quickly composed herself. "I am Anna Green, Princess," she said politely. "I'm Baron Green's daughter." Unlike the others, she did not embellish her introduction with details of wealth or influence. She simply lowered her gaze once more, as though hoping to fade into the background. Athanasia noticed the girl's modest beige dress. It lacked the expensive lace, embroidery, or gemstones that adorned the others. Yet rather than look down on her, the princess smiled warmly. "It's nice to meet you, Lady Anna," she said, her voice gentle. A small blush crept up Anna's cheeks, but she nodded respectfully. As the conversation continued, it naturally drifted towards politics. Discussions of trade, diplomatic alliances, and court intrigue filled the air. Jeanette, however, sat stiffly, completely out of her depth. She barely understood the terms being used, and as she remained silent, the other ladies took notice. On the other hand, Anna, who had remained quiet before, suddenly came to life. Her shyness faded as she spoke with confidence, explaining market fluctuations and trade agreements with impressive clarity. "I believe the recent tariffs imposed on imported grain will have a long-term effect on the merchant class," Anna commented thoughtfully. "If adjustments aren't made, it could strain relations with our neighboring regions." Athanasia tilted her head, intrigued. "That's an interesting point, Lady Anna. What would you propose as a solution?" "The court could introduce tax incentives for local farmers," Anna suggested. "It would stabilize the market while reducing dependence on imports. The treasury would lose some revenue in the short term, but the economic benefits would outweigh the costs in the long run." A murmur of approval spread among the young ladies. Even those from powerful merchant families seemed impressed by Anna's knowledge. Athanasia smiled. "That's a well-thought-out argument. You must be quite studious." Anna's face turned red. I just like to read, Your Highness." The noble ladies nodded in agreement, but their gazes subtly flickered toward Jeanette. Unlike Anna, who had proven herself insightful, Jeanette had contributed nothing of substance. She felt the weight of their silent judgment, and her grip tightened around her teacup. A few of them exchanged knowing glances. Lady Jeanette is a princess, but she knows nothing of politics? Lady Anna, a baron's daughter, is more knowledgeable than her? Jeanette could hear the unspoken thoughts in their eyes. No matter how she dressed or how she carried herself, it wasn't enough. She was still being overshadowed. As the young ladies chatted animatedly about the latest trends and the changing fashions in society, Jeanette sat quietly, still trying to gather her thoughts. Athanasia, while effortlessly charming, was equally out of touch with the trends of the day. She had always stayed within the confines of the imperial city and rarely ventured beyond the palace walls, making her knowledge of current social affairs somewhat limited. Jeanette could relate, her own upbringing had been similarly restrictive, her life controlled by the Duke and his tight grip on her interactions with the outside world. She had spent most of her time at the mansion, under the Duke's strict rules, with little to no chance to participate in the social scene outside of her official debut. "I've never really been involved with the latest fashions or trends in society," Athanasia admitted with a soft laugh, sipping her tea nonchalantly. "I suppose I never had much of a reason to, given how rarely I've left the palace." Jeanette glanced at her half-sister, noticing the casualness with which Athanasia spoke about her own life, while she herself had always been restricted, shielded in the Duke's mansion, never truly allowed to explore the world outside. "She's never had the same limitations," Jeanette thought bitterly, but she quickly masked her feelings with a polite smile. I didn't really have the chance either," Jeanette said quietly. "The Duke kept me in the mansion most of the time. It's only recently that I've started venturing outside, but even then, not much." She paused, unsure whether to reveal too much. "I guess you could say we've both missed out." Athanasia gave Jeanette an understanding smile. "It's true. It must be difficult for someone in your position, Lady Jeanette, to miss out on so many experiences." Her voice was kind, but the rest of the young ladies didn't seem to notice the hint of empathy, as their focus was beginning to shift to another topic of conversation: young lords. As if on cue, one of the ladies raised her glass, intrigued by the new direction the conversation had taken. "Do you know, Princess Athanasia, what young lords have been catching attention recently? I've heard rumors about a few of them." Athanasia raised an eyebrow, clearly interested, but it was Jeanette who felt a tightening in her chest. The conversation had shifted, and for once, it seemed to have something to do with her. "I'm sure Lady Jeanette knows more about young lords than I do," Athanasia said with a teasing smile. "After all, she's acquainted with one of the most well-known young lords in the Empire." Jeanette blinked, suddenly aware that every eye in the room had turned toward her. The room seemed to quiet, and the other ladies, who had barely acknowledged her until now, leaned forward in eager anticipation. "Who would that be, Lady Jeanette?" Lady Seraphina asked, her voice laced with curiosity. The others exchanged whispers, intrigued by the sudden attention. Jeanette felt a sharp pang of discomfort, but her thoughts faltered as she realized what was happening. They wanted to know about Ezekiel. For a moment, Jeanette hesitated. She had spent so many years hidden in the shadows of the Duke's estate, far from the spotlight. But Ezekiel was a figure they were all curious about. The heir to Duke Alpheus. Jeanette cleared her throat. "Ezekiel," she began, her voice softer than she intended. "He's the heir to the Duke of Alpheus. He's been involved in many matters of importance with the Duke's estate." She shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "He's well known in certain circles." "Is he as handsome as they say?" Lady Irene asked, her eyes gleaming with interest. "The heir to the Duke? He must be." Jeanette's chest tightened, but she nodded stiffly. "Yes, I suppose so." There was a moment of silence before the conversation was interrupted by a presence, a young man strolling through the gardens, his head held high, his expression confident and charming. It was Lucas, the young mage. His short black hair contrasted with the bright sunshine, and his ruby-red eyes sparkled as he approached with an easy smile, making every lady around the table pause to look. Jeanette frowned, feeling a twinge of annoyance rise within her. Why did he always seem to attract so much attention? "Princess, who's that?" Lady Irene, the daughter of a marquess, asked Athanasia, her voice filled with curiosity. Athanasia glanced up, her face betraying no hint of emotion. "Oh, that's Sir Lucas," she said with a casual air. "He's a mage at the tower." "Is he really?" At such a young age, another lady gasped, clearly impressed. He looks so youthful, how is it possible? Lucas's gaze briefly met theirs, and he offered a polite smile as he came closer. His presence seemed to captivate the entire group. "How old are you, my lord?" one of the young ladies asked. Lucas's smile deepened as he replied smoothly, "I'm the same age as you, of course." "But you're already a mage at the tower?" another lady asked, sounding almost breathless with admiration. "How long have you been working there?" 7 years, Athanasia responded before Lucas could answer. There was a subtle edge to her tone, as if she were beginning to grow weary of the questions. "Lucas has been at the tower for 7 years now. He's quite accomplished for someone so young." Jeanette observed the way the young ladies leaned forward, enchanted by every word Lucas spoke. They hung on his every word, impressed by his magical prowess, his accomplishments, and the fact that he was part of the prestigious tower. "You live at the tower, Sir Lucas?" another lady asked, her voice tinged with awe. "No," Lucas replied with a polite, composed smile. "I live at the Sapphire Palace, the same palace where the second princess resides. His Majesty offered me residence there when I came." At that, the ladies around the table gasped, clearly understanding the significance of his statement. The Sapphire Palace was a residence meant only for the most distinguished guests, those held in high esteem by the emperor. The realization settled in like a heavy weight, and as they realized the extent of Lucas's importance, their awe deepened. But for Jeanette, it felt like a slap in the face. Lucas, a mere mage, was given a place at the Sapphire Palace, while she, an imperial princess, had to be housed in a guest residence, never given her own private space. The Sapphire Palace, as they all now realized, was a sign of Lucas's favor in the eyes of the emperor. To Jeanette, however, it symbolized her own insignificance in the emperor's world, a princess without a place, a daughter who was overlooked. Her grip on her teacup tightened as her gaze drifted to Lucas, whose charming smile only seemed to grow more dazzling with each word. As the gathering drew to a close, the warm afternoon sunlight cast a golden hue over the garden, the scent of roses lingering in the air. The young ladies chatted amongst themselves, their excitement lingering even as the servants began to clear the delicate porcelain teacups and polished silverware from the lace-covered table. Athanasia, ever the gracious hostess, rose from her seat with effortless elegance. In her hands was a small embroidered silk pouch, its fabric shimmering under the afternoon light. "I have prepared a small gift for each of you," she announced, her voice warm yet composed. "It's nothing extravagant, but I hope you'll find it thoughtful." The noble ladies exchanged eager glances, their curiosity piqued. One by one, Athanasia handed out the gifts, silk handkerchiefs, each embroidered with delicate floral patterns in gold and silver thread. The stitches were meticulous, the designs intricate, evidence of hours of careful craftsmanship. Some bore roses, others lilies, and a few even had tiny birds woven into the fabric. "Oh my! Did you make these yourself, Your Highness?" Lady Clarice asked, holding up a pale pink handkerchief with embroidered peonies. Her voice brimmed with admiration. Athanasia gave a small nod, smiling. "Yes, I did. I enjoy embroidery in my free time." Gasps of admiration rippled through the group. "They're exquisite," Lady Seraphina exclaimed, running her fingers over the fine stitches. "I can hardly believe the princess herself made these." "The craftsmanship is impeccable," another young lady murmured, holding her gift close as if it were the most precious thing she had ever received. Even Anna Green, who had been reserved for much of the gathering, looked genuinely touched as she accepted her handkerchief, a soft pastel green adorned with white lilies. "It's beautiful, Your Highness," she said sincerely. "Thank you." Jeanette, however, said nothing. When it was her turn, she simply took the silk handkerchief from Athanasia's hands without a word, her fingers curling around the fabric. It was a deep blue, the shade of twilight, embroidered with delicate silver stars. It was undoubtedly beautiful, yet Jeanette couldn't bring herself to voice any words of gratitude. She could feel the eyes of the noble ladies flickering toward her, expecting her to say something, anything, to acknowledge the gift. But she remained silent. Athanasia, for her part, didn't seem to mind. If she noticed Jeanette's lack of response, she gave no indication of it. Instead, she simply continued handing out the remaining handkerchiefs, her smile unwavering. The air remained light with admiration as the noble ladies continued to praise Athanasia's skills. Jeanette, however, clutched the handkerchief tightly in her lap, her expression unreadable. As the gathering came to an end, the noble ladies curtsied and bid their farewells, their voices filled with excitement and gratitude. Yet Jeanette lingered for a moment, staring at the handkerchief in her hands. It was beautiful. But it didn't make her feel any less invisible. Like, comment and subscribe to be notified for updates in the series.